Welcome to another episode of On the Issues with Alon Ben-Meir. Today's guest is Ambassador Frederic C. Hof, Bard College's Diplomat-in-Residence, who served as Ambassador and Special Advisor for Transition in Syria under President Obama, and as Special Coordinator for Regional Affairs in the U.S. Department of State's Office of the Special Envoy for Middle East Peace. A U.S. Army Vietnam veteran, Ambassador Hof served 2 tours of duty in the U.S. Department of State. In this episode, Alon and Ambassador Hof discuss his recent Track 2 diplomacy work in Lebanon regarding the prospects of a future Israeli-Lebanese agreement and the elements of the consensus document developed from this work, as well as the impact of the war on Iran on this delicate diplomacy work.
Good afternoon to you, friend, my very dear friend, and thank you again so much for coming on this podcast, which is live. And I hope some of our listeners, I am sure, will not only enjoy it, but will learn a great deal from what you have to say. Recently, you have written this exceptional piece about your mediating effort, your track to approach diplomacy and trying to mitigate the conflict between Israel and Lebanon. It's a fabulous piece of work. I love reading it more than once. I just several times. and needless to say, coming from you, it's no surprise. It's a great piece, and we are publishing it, as you know, in our journal. And I'm sure many people will enjoy it and learn a great deal from it. But before I start with discussing the paper itself, I'd like just to briefly introduce you to those who don't. I don't know how many people should not know you, but maybe some still don't.
I think lots don't know me.
Frederic Hof is a senior fellow at Bright Center for Civic Engagement. Has had a distinguished career with the United States Army, Department of State, and the international consulting firm AALC, specializing in the Middle East region. He served as ambassador and as special advisor for transition in Syria under President Obama, and as a special coordinator for regional affairs in the United States Department of State Office of the Special Envoy for the Middle East, where he conducted a backchannel peace mediation between Israel and Syria. Again, thank you again, Fred, for coming on this program.
Alon, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be with you. And the fact that you would publish something I've written is particularly wonderful. Thank you so much.
No, listen, it's my honor and my pleasure, believe me. Let me begin with the initial statement, in fact, you made in your paper. And you said, you define your mission through Track 2 diplomacy as a foundation building for what sustainable security agreement between Israel and Lebanon would look like. Can you enlighten our listeners to what do you mean by that?
Yeah, what we had in mind from the beginning, Alon, and this involved me and a Canadian colleague who was actually in the business of running Track 2 unofficial diplomacy projects. What we had from the beginning as an objective was to try to talk to knowledgeable Lebanese and Israeli contacts about the contents of an actual written agreement between Lebanon and Israel that would reconcile 2 things: Israeli security and Lebanese sovereignty. For the past almost 60 years, it's 6 decades now, Lebanon has not had control of its southern districts. And non-state actors, initially Palestinians and more recently Hezbollah, have used this lack of control to create incidents across the border. So what our initial objective was to work with both sides, get their input, and see if we could actually put together a document that could reflect the basic objectives of both sides.
Right. So in that regard, what was, because you indicated initial, of course, you made fairly good progress initially. Can you elaborate what the initial foundation you've been able to create in order to make it actually create some for the officials, United States, now Israel and Lebanon, actually using some of what you have been
Yeah.
able to accomplish in their negotiation as at the very present time?
Yeah,
As we
we were able to come up last fall with a consensus document. Again, this involves discussions with non-officials. All right, on both sides, Alon, we had a range of contacts, former officials, retired military generals, people close to officials on
right,
both sides, but this was entirely at an unofficial level. We were able to come up with a consensus document that basically would have done two things. It would have terminated the state of war that has existed between Lebanon and Israel since 1948.
right,
Okay, that legal state of war would be removed, and it would have instituted a body of cooperative actions between the two militaries, the Lebanese Armed Forces and the Israel Defense Forces, that would have secured the so-called blue line, the
right,
line drawn by the United Nations in 2000 to confirm Israel's withdrawal. This would not, it would have fallen short of being a peace treaty. Okay.
right,
Our view, and I think the view of probably most Israelis and Lebanese, certainly our contacts, is that it's a bit premature to move all the way to peace and normalization. But in any event, we finished our document. We shared it. We shared it with the parties when we made what we thought was our final report last November.
right,
The project continued. We updated the document to take into account the renewal of all-out war
right, right,
between the United States and Iran, Israel and Iran on February 28th. So the two sides, and I presume at the official level also, have this document, this updated document that was created, and it does appear to have informed some of the provisions of the trilateral mechanism that was agreed to by Israel, the United States, and Lebanon about a month ago in June.
Yeah, but as a matter of fact, Fred, reading your paper and reading what's been being discussed now, I see quite a bit of what you provided being actually discussed. That is not more than informed. You provided even more than just information. You provided some foundation for the continuation of these discussions. Would you say that? I mean, that's my impression, that your work really is gone far more than just keeping them informed about what the parties are saying or intending to do, want to do, but in fact, you give them even more meat, so to speak, than mere information.
Well, I hope we've given them some meat. There's one concept in the trilateral mechanism, this agreement involving the United States, Israel, and Lebanon, that seems to be derived from something we've been pushing for months and months and months with both sides, and that is that there be a detailed plan created whereby units of the Lebanese armed forces, the Lebanese army, would systematically replace units of the Israel Defense Forces in parts of Lebanon occupied by the Israel Defense Forces. It would be systematic, step by step, and it would be sector by sector. There would have to be solid assurance that any Hezbollah military capability in these areas would be thoroughly neutralized, would not be a factor. This has emerged in this new trilateral agreement in the form of something called pilot zones.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
exactly.
that's the name. The more technical military terminology of it is relief in place.
Relief in place. That's
Relief
right.
in place, where one unit
Yeah,
moves in and replaces
yeah.
in place another military unit. I have no objection to the phrase pilot zones if that's the way they want to articulate it. The important thing is that this ultimately, at least in southern Lebanon, is the way Lebanese sovereignty gets reconciled with Israeli security.
Right. But I mean, and of course, would have been a significant achievement had it been they have been able to, if they were able to implement it. Because
Well,
what's
implementation, Alon, is a work in progress. This is the central subject being discussed right now in Rome between Israeli and Lebanese negotiators with the U.S. present.
exactly, but the element is missing. That is, uh, they can, please correct me if you think I'm wrong in this regard. And that is, they may very well let's say, reach an agreement. But to what extent that can be implementable, can be in fact realized, unless Hezbollah is willing to participate and agree to such an agreement, because after all, these areas being occupied by Hezbollah itself, and that be then pushed back. And to say that the Lebanese armed forces will come and replace gradually the Israeli forces, I think it's a wonderful idea. That's great if it works. But can you bring this about?
Yeah, I think it requires a couple of ingredients, Alon. First of all, when the Lebanese army moves in to relieve in place an Israeli army unit, our recommendation is that the Lebanese army occupy the village, if you will, the destroyed village.
Okay.
Okay? Occupy and garrison the populated area where people will be returning to rebuild their homes, rebuild their infrastructure, and so forth. It's extraordinarily important that the Lebanese army be inside these areas. And if I were arguing this from an Israeli point of view, I would insist on it because the problem before February 28th, before the renewal of all-out war with Iran, was the Lebanese army was doing a reasonably good job, according to U.S. Central Command
Right.
officers, was doing a reasonably good job of establishing general operational control in southern Lebanon. But there was one big problem. The army was not inside populated areas. Hezbollah, in many cases, in many of these villages, was on the inside. So, if the Lebanese army somehow found out that there was an arms cache or a cave, where things were being stored, uh, it would have to ponder, how do we deal with this? Do we ask Hezbollah's permission to come into the village? Do we storm the village and provoke a military confrontation with Hezbollah? I think if the pilot zone concept is done right, that problem can be avoided, or at least mitigated, because Israeli units currently sitting on top of these destroyed villages would be turning over their positions directly to Lebanese army units. And the other factor in implementation, of course, a strong, persistent, patient American third-party monitoring role. And frankly, between us,
Not
Alon,
at all,
and
at
our
all.
listeners, I wonder, this is not a rhetorical question, it's a genuine question. Just how prepared is the U.S. military for what we would call in the Army a long patrol, what's also referred to as a heavy lift? This implementation will not be easy. It'll take a while, and it'll take resources, and it will involve a degree of danger.
Yeah, and extremely tall order. I could not agree more with you on this point. But there's the other aspect, the other dimension. That is, let us take this one step further and assume that the Lebanese army will be able to move in
Sure.
gently, able to replace certain IDF units in the south. But let's look at the Israeli situation position now. The Israelis, based on what you implied also in your paper, there's a reluctance. They do not trust anyone for that matter.
No.
They think Hezbollah is obviously a non-state actor on their border, threatening them day in and day out. That's how they see it. Now, by creating this, let's call it a buffer, so then they have Lebanese are sitting in these areas, basically separating Israel from from Hezbollah. Would you say that?
Yes, definitely. Israel has occupied strongly a part of southern Lebanon, south of a line that it has drawn that they call the Yellow Line.
Which means, based on what I know, I'm talking to, and you know that better than anyone, the Israeli public, the Israeli government, are not interested in simply leaving Hezbollah alone. They still want to eliminate Hezbollah, which means if they were to agree even to this arrangement where the Lebanese units will come and replace IDF units, Hezbollah basically will be shielded. That is the only way they will not be attacked, that Israel will leave Hezbollah alone if they're not attacked by Hezbollah. But then again, that is not what Netanyahu wants. Based on my conversation very recently with some Israeli officials, Netanyahu does not want this to end. Do you have that same sense yourself?
Yes, many of our Israeli contacts, even contacts who consider themselves close to Prime Minister Netanyahu, shared with us the view that Netanyahu sees continuing armed conflict in Lebanon as important for his reelection prospects this October. We heard this. We heard this across the board. This is reinforced by the fact that public opinion polls indicate that 70 to 80% of likely Israeli voters are not at all interested in a ceasefire in Lebanon or some kind of agreement with the Lebanese government and the Lebanese armed forces. They would like to see the conflict continue. There is a great deal of sympathy in Israel for Israelis who live close to the Lebanese border and the suffering that they've undergone and the evacuations that they've had to go through. So there are real psychological obstacles here. It's hard to find anyone, Alon, in Israel who has much confidence at all in the ability of the Lebanese government or the Lebanese army to really secure southern Lebanon from a Hezbollah military presence, much less the rest of the country. Okay, so
Exactly.
what this is going to take with strong American mediation is a step-by-step process where the Lebanese army demonstrates to its IDF counterparts that it means business, that it's going to operate professionally. Now, will that be enough at the political level? to please Prime Minister Netanyahu? Perhaps not. But on the ground, one would hope that a relationship of mutual respect could be developed between the two militaries. Because
That's
after all, there'll be an election in Israel in October, and who knows what the result is going to be. The IDF will be the IDF, no matter what those election results are.
that's right. So the point, however, this is remain this, that is just like with case with Hamas, Netanyahu was determined after the October 7 that Hamas would have to be eliminated completely, basically destroyed, and they will continue the fight until that's going to happen. That simply did not happen. Israel did not have the capacity to obliterate Hamas. Hamas is still standing, and if they disarm, they are disarming now voluntarily under certain conditions. The same thing can be said with Hezbollah. For years and years and years, Israel has been waging this war, quote unquote, with Hezbollah. What is there any reason to believe that Israelis to this very day, the government is specifically still determined that Hezbollah need to be eliminated? And I'm repeating this point because this agreement, even with American robust involvement, determination to place forces in place to make sure that both parties adhere to it, they have no control over Hezbollah. And still now, I'd like to address this point, now that the resumption of hostilities between the United States and Iran has taken place, what is going to happen now? That is, Iran has zero interest in controlling Hezbollah. They're not interested. That is, if they want to further ignite the fire in Lebanon itself, this is an opportunity for them to do so. So all of this effort on the one side, America, Lebanon, Israel trying, is one thing, but it is contingent upon some kind of arrangement of control about the hostilities going on with Iran at this point. What do we do now?
Yeah, and it appears, Alon, that President Trump has made a decision. I have no idea how long he will sustain it, but he has made a decision that the so-called ceasefire with Iran is over, and that all-out war is resuming. Now, this puts some decisions right in the face of the Iranians. How do they respond? Obviously, they'll be hitting merchant ships that try to transit the Strait of Hormuz. They will be hitting oil facilities, most likely in neighboring Arab states. But what do they do about Hezbollah? This is the question. The operational fact of the matter is that Hezbollah's leadership cadre, the people at the top, consider themselves to be part and parcel of the Iranian Islamic Revolution.
Exactly.
The fact of the matter is that Hezbollah military elements are commanded on the ground
Yes.
by Iranian officers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Wow.
So this gives Iran a choice. Now that we're being hammered by the United States, and who knows, Israel could join in that at a moment's notice, depending on what President Trump wants to do. What do we Iranians do? Do we tell Hezbollah to resume firing rockets and missiles at Israel, knowing that when we gave that order back on March the 2nd of this year, there was a lot of resentment within the Lebanese Shiite community, where the base of Hezbollah's political support in Lebanon is located. There was a lot of resentment. Why in the name of God are we once again being put in the middle of somebody else's war? All right. Iran and Hezbollah have in the meantime somewhat recovered from that reputational damage thanks in large part to the way Israel has waged war in Lebanon.
Right.
The Iranians, Alon, I think the Iranians would now have an interesting choice. Do we once again have Hezbollah open fire on Israel, knowing full well that the Israeli response, which in recent weeks has been limited, okay, the Israeli response will be overwhelming, that large parts of the southern suburbs of Beirut will be destroyed? Do we do that? Or do we set Lebanon to the side and perhaps ask our Houthi allies in Yemen to do something to close down the Bab el-Mandeb? So
Exactly.
it's not 100% clear to me, Alon, that the Iranians in this case will automatically tell their Hezbollah proxies to open fire. They may well do it, but I could see the rationale of not doing it.
I think you're absolutely right. They may not. As a matter of fact, this is precisely what does not serve Israel interests, because they do not want, not only because Israel will have the reason now to provide them with the reason to attack Iran itself again
Yes.
and Hezbollah as well, but also they will prevent Israel from weakening Hezbollah at this point when they have other options to play, have other cards to play, and that is instigating the Houthis, for example, turn the clock, turn to the other side. And that is what's going to open a new front for Israel and a new front for the United States. I think they're absolutely on target with that. And they may I think the Iranians are far more calculating, far more strategic than both probably Israel and the United States, for that matter. I really believe that, because the Israeli government, especially this government, Netanyahu's government, has such a hang-up about the use of force, disproportionate for that matter. And because of this disproportionality of use of force against these Shiite community, they have alienated, as you exactly point out in your article, alienated 40% of the Lebanese population. That is, Israel, basically indiscriminate attacks has played into the hands of Hezbollah and Iran.
Well, and even President Trump, who is not necessarily known for his dedication to applying the law of war, literally, even President Trump has criticized his Israeli counterpart, saying basically, what's going on here, Bibi? You spot a Hezbollah operative in an apartment building, and the next thing you know, the apartment building is dropped to the ground. Why are you fighting this way? In the end, Alon, what the Lebanese government is trying to do is to establish a monopoly on weapons of war and war and peace decisions in Lebanon. The people who have the decisive vote, if you will, in
Mhm.
whether or not this succeeds are the Shiites of Lebanon.
Yes,
Upwards of 40%
right.
of Lebanon's population. People who down through the decades have been systematically ignored by an absent Lebanese government.
Oh,
People who receive their social services, law and order protection, everything, education, almost everything from Hezbollah. The government of Lebanon is competing, trying to compete with Hezbollah for the support and loyalty of Lebanese Shiites. I know, if I put myself in the position of the IDF commander or even just an IDF officer, I know how difficult it is to neutralize security threats that are embedded deliberately within a civilian population. I know that's not easy, As a Vietnam veteran, I recognize this problem in Vietnam, and there were many times when we did not handle this well. I would be satisfied at this point if there were political and military leadership in Israel that could at least accept intellectually the notion that how Lebanese Shiites vote on this issue is going to define victory, defeat, or just ongoing endless warfare for Israel. Once this is accepted intellectually, then military tactics can be altered appropriately. But right now there doesn't seem to be that acceptance, and increasingly Lebanese Shiites are coming to the conclusion, wait a minute. Israel considers us to be the enemy, not just Hezbollah, but us as
Exactly.
a community. I don't know if that's objectively true or not, Alon, but I can understand why Lebanese Shiites, based on the way Israel has waged war in Lebanon, I can understand how and why they would reach this conclusion.
And you know why? I mean, Israeli officials all openly say, we are not going to withdraw from southern Lebanon, period, almost under any circumstance. As recently as Israel Katz, the defense minister,
Yeah,
and many of his colleagues in the government saying, southern part of Lebanon. And we may think this in some esoteric notion, but
yeah,
from their perspective, southern part of Lebanon is part of a greater Israel. Just the same thing, the part of the Golan Heights, that's a part of a greater Israel. And I really, in talking to some of these people, I'm really not shocked anymore. They say that in with open, face. This is our ancient homeland. That's how they refer to some part of southern Lebanon.
yeah.
So do you think that Israel, in fact, negotiating with the United States and Lebanon directly or indirectly in good faith? I personally, I don't want to answer this question. What do you, from your experience, do you think they are negotiating in good faith?
It's difficult. It's difficult to say. I don't have any personal insight into the Israeli negotiating team. I do have an old friend who serves in an important national security position in Israel, and based on my conversations with that person, I would say yes. There is a good faith negotiation going on. Prime Minister Netanyahu, for what it's worth, has said multiple times, Israel has no territorial designs on Lebanon. Okay, that's the statement that's out there, I guess, as the official position. We'll know for sure when we get down to the yellow line in southern Lebanon. I understand fully the Israeli position, that we, the IDF, are not going to move until we are certain that the Lebanese army is fully in control. And P.S., we doubt that the Lebanese army will ever be fully in control. What I think is potentially destructive, if it stands up as Israeli policy, is the Israeli position that it does not intend to leave Lebanon until Hezbollah is disarmed in the entirety of the country.
This
That
is what.
if that stands, then this will not end well
But
diplomatically.
But Fred, exactly this is the point. And that is, they are saying this, they have said that. They are seeking the utter and complete destruction of Hezbollah as a precondition to leaving. I mean, I've heard them saying this openly, several
Yeah.
ministers.
I mean, it's it would be one thing alone. It would be more understandable to me anyway if the Israeli position is look, we are going to maintain our overflights in Lebanese airspace as long as Hezbollah remains an armed non-state actor in Lebanon. That I can understand. If I were an Israeli, I would insist on this. But the idea that I have to have boots on the ground on Lebanese territory in southern Lebanon until the day arrives, that Hezbollah is completely disarmed, that makes no sense to me. There is no military utility. As long as the Lebanese army is truly in control, then there is no military utility for there to be Israeli boots on the ground in Lebanon.
Yeah, but then let's take the two things we already mentioned, and that is one, it is clear that you and I agree that, and most observers of the scene agree that Israel today is more interested in continuing the conflict as long as at least until the election, because that will give Netanyahu an upper hand to a great extent. State of war, the Israelis normally are more united when there is no security threat to the country. And the second thing is that, however overtly or are saying so, they do not want to withdraw completely as long as Hezbollah is not totally disarmed, which means if they are negotiating now, it's basically playing for time. That's how I see it. Do you see it any different?
Yeah, no, playing for time is a characteristic of many negotiations. Maybe maybe most of them alone, but I think we have to consider here that another party that has an important vote on how this all turns out is the United States. All right, and if President Trump insists, and there are recent indications suggesting he may insist, that Israel plan to evacuate southern Lebanon, and that Israel plan to evacuate Syrian territory east of the Golan Heights. If President Trump sticks with that and decides to enforce it, my sense of Israeli political conditions right now is that Prime Minister Netanyahu would have no choice but to comply with something that explicitly directed by Donald Trump. My question, if I can pose a question to you, could you ever, Alon, see a set of circumstances where Prime Minister Netanyahu would calculate that it's in his interests for this coming October to separate himself from Donald Trump, to push back?
No, he will not be wanting to pushing back. But on the other hand, Trump may not be so insisting because he too is facing midterm elections, and the sentiment among the MAGA still is supportive of Israel. That is, would he in fact draw such a red line to Netanyahu and say either or? That is both facing elections, and that is a major factor in their calculus. Where to go from here? I agree with you. He already told Netanyahu, you have to stop attacking. That's been said, but up to a point. But when hostilities resumed, which I'd like to touch back to Iran, between the United States and Iran, the Israelis been cheering on again. And many of them are saying it's much better for us now that there is no agreement than there's a bad agreement. And so now let's switch now. Go back to the Iran. Iran being a direct and indirect factor as to what's going to happen in Lebanon. These hostilities are gonna. I don't think it's going to end any time soon. And not today, not tomorrow. It's going to be for a while. How do you see that evolve, and how do you see that impacting the ongoing now negotiation between the three parties, namely Israel, Lebanon, and the United States.
Yes, Iran definitely has a vote in how all of this turns out. Particularly if it orders Hezbollah to go back into attack mode on Israel. Um, Beyond that, I think we should keep in mind uh, that to the extent President Trump, up till now, has been very critical of Israeli actions in Lebanon, it's been largely a function of his perception, Donald Trump's perception, that Israeli behavior in Lebanon was basically undermining its ceasefire with Iran. Now, if the ceasefire is permanently gone, I suppose President Trump might be tempted to take all restraints away from Israel in terms of how it fights in Lebanon. There will be a very important meeting this coming Monday in Washington. The president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, will be visiting the United States to have a meeting with President Trump in the White House. And I think Aoun will do his very best to persuade the president to persist with strong American mediation, again aimed at reconciling Lebanese sovereignty with Israeli security. But you're absolutely correct. I mean, you could choose whatever metaphor. There are many chefs in the kitchen, many moving parts in this scenario, and I suspect we can expect the unexpected from the President of the United States. And you may be in a better position, Alon, to predict what that may be than I am.
Oh, boy, that's a heavy. That's a ton of burden. I dare not. To Merkelian, a person like Trump, to guess what he's going to do next. I can tell you.
I joke with my Israeli and Lebanese friends are forever asking me how I would define American policy about this, that, or the other thing. And I said, look, we are, everybody in this room is in the exact same position as Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We have no idea what the president's going to say if he wakes up at 4:22 tomorrow morning and starts typing something. We just don't know.
Nobody knows. Going back to one point, of course, that you made in the paper, and that is, and I fully agree with you. Lebanon and Israel left their own devices. They will make peace tomorrow, in my view, if there was no interference from anyone, from any other party, be that Hezbollah, Lebanon, the United States. That is, if they left their own devices,
Yes.
and there's no other external actors impacting the conflict, they will make peace tomorrow.
Yes.
Then you have, of course, you have Hezbollah, you have Iran, you have the United States. Their interests that even though Hezbollah and Iran may see eye to eye on a number, but still Hezbollah has its own agenda just as well. I mean, Hezbollah need to survive, and Iran provide them that lifeline. They need that all the time, but they also need to maintain some kind of, put that in quote, independence as far as the Shiite community is concerned, because they don't want to be seen as the stooges of Iran day in and day out. That is, I mean, I see that, they say as much. So given the fact that there are these players outside, we cannot guess. We don't know what Trump is going to do next. we don't, Netanyahu has his own agenda. He's certainly not going to reveal to you or to me or anyone what he would like to see. All he wants to do is be able to put back another coalition government comes end of October. That's what he would like to see. And Trump, all he wants to see is prevent the Democrat from taking at least the House.
Sure.
So they are going to pursue policies, strategies, and approaches that serve their own immediate interests.
Yes.
A particular interest. And I see a sort of a collision between that interest and what it is they want to achieve, in fact, if it's at all achievable in Lebanon. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I think it's very important for Israelis, especially for senior Israeli officials, to start processing this conflict in Lebanon more in terms of how can we help the government of Lebanon win this competition with Iran's proxies in Lebanon. And I fully understand all of the Israeli skepticism about Lebanese intentions, Lebanese abilities, and so forth. It is all totally understandable. The point my Canadian colleague and I try to make to our Israeli friends is that for the first time in almost 70 years, you have a Lebanese president and a Lebanese prime minister in particular who want to help Lebanon escape from Iran's partial suzerainty over the country. All right. And given the fact that Israel for 60 years has been dealing with non-state actors in southern Lebanon, isn't it worth a degree of risk? I would never ask any Israeli official or any Israeli military officer to place at risk Israeli civilians anywhere, especially those living in the north of Israel. But isn't it worth a bit of diplomatic creativity and open-mindedness to try something a little bit different, especially in the way war is waged? Okay, especially in terms of public diplomacy. Instead of contradictory statements, oh, we have no territorial designs on Lebanon on the one hand, and then on the other, we're not gonna, we probably will never leave this buffer zone. Can't we do something a bit more consistent? And again, I understand the skepticism. But doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and never achieving a decisive result. This is insane.
Yeah, of course, Israelis have a reason to be skeptical,
Sure.
but also do the Lebanese, do the Hezbollah, does Iran, and then we cannot. I think all of this discussion, of course, stands alone, but it cannot be totally isolated from what else is happening in the region.
No.
And I just want to throw this for a moment for a discussion with you, and that is the Israeli conduct in connection with the Palestinians. That is to suggest that what Israel is doing as we speak now in the West Bank and continue to do with Gaza does not have any repercussion or implicating or making it harder for the Lebanese, for Hezbollah, for Iran, for all of Israel, or even France. Can you really isolate that from what's going on? That is, why should anyone trust Israel? Why should the Lebanese trust Israel? Why should Iran trust Israel? I just like to put this on the table because what Israel is doing, can we really isolate all of this from what's going on with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? See, to me, Iran is enmity from the very beginning. the birth of Hezbollah in the 80s, the birth of Hamas in the 90s, early 90s. This is as a result of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So these all, what we are seeing now today is the quote unquote, the fruit of what actually Israeli-Palestinian conflict has produced. That is, in my view, remain the source. The source, that's where the snakes hit, so to speak. And that is, unless, in my view, is a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we are not going to see anything resemble stability in the region, not with anyone. Do you see it that way? I personally believe that. I've been writing about it, thinking about it, dissecting it to pieces, talking to hundreds of people about, and I have not still came to the same conclusion. That is, we are going to continue the struggle with Iran, with Lebanon, with Iraq, with all of these countries, unless we can't find a path to try to resolve the Israeli problem. At a minimum, begin the process of ending the Israeli horrific criminal occupation and the loss of life of so many tens of thousands of Palestinians, not to speak of the horrific destruction that took place in Gaza. I mean, I cannot separate what I see happening today in the region from what instigated possibly all of this going back 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, Alon, as a practical political matter, I don't see how any of this can be separated. I think what's going on in the West Bank, what is continuing in Gaza, cannot be isolated. In terms of the track 2 work, my partner and I have been doing, I must say that on the Lebanese side, the word Palestinians rarely comes up. Okay, it's all about Lebanon. The one thing Lebanon has in common with Israel is that each place, I think, considers itself to be the hub of the universe, around which everything rotates. But as a practical matter, the kind of agreement my colleague and I have been encouraging the two sides to work toward is possible certainly without a settlement, concerning Palestinian self-determination. But to get all the way to peace, no, impossible, without Palestinian political self-determination, and with specifics to be negotiated and so forth. Even on a lesser agreement, the kind of agreement that my colleague and I are pushing, the Lebanese for sure will turn to the Saudis and others and say, "Are you comfortable with this?" They'll ask, and they'll want to have the green light. I think they can probably get a green light for a security agreement that falls short of formal peace and normalization. But for some Israelis to suggest that, hey, let's just move straight to a peace agreement with Lebanon, this cannot happen. It cannot happen given the current state of affairs in the West Bank and Gaza. It's impossible.
No, I fully agree with you when you said, reaching some initial security agreement
Yeah.
as a step one, that's a prerequisite. to further develop, to build on that. And if that is to achieve, then there is going to be some kind of progress. But I
Yeah.
think the whole Arab world, the Iran, Hezbollah would like also to see the United States do something about what Israel. Not one word is coming from this administration condemning Israel for what it's doing in the West Bank, for example, day in and day out. Not one word. And basically, we continue to provide all what Israel needs day in and day out. And I think that's sending a clear message to the rest of the world, to the Arab countries. The United States doesn't give a damn about anyone. Doesn't looking, watching Israel doing this carnage day in and day out,
Yeah.
lifting a finger, and that is without any question puts a terrible, put in America, in Israel, but specifically in a very bad spot, in a bad light. That's why I'm saying they do not believe that either parties are negotiating in good faith, because there is no reason to assume that Israel is negotiating in good faith, given what it is doing today, given what's coming out from the mouth of these crazy ministers, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, talking openly
Yeah.
about annexation, talking openly about greater Israel, talking openly about ethnic cleansing. I mean, this is a reality. Everybody is listening to that. And
Well,
so,
this is a problem we've faced, Alon, in our Track Two efforts. There are Lebanese contacts who will quote exactly,
yeah,
from the latest statement of Smotrich or Ben-Gvir, and they'll say this is the real agenda. And we try to push back on that, perhaps with some degree of success, not total success. But yes, when these people speak, it has an impact
yeah,
on how people in neighboring countries, and not just Lebanon. I'm sure this is true in Egypt, Jordan, and
yeah.
elsewhere. How they evaluate Israeli intentions. I think it's an unfortunate conclusion to come to, but again, it's something that's understandable.
Yeah, and we can go on. I can tell you a conversation I had recently with Jordanian official. They are so concerned, so worried. They don't know what to expect next. And look, they've been attacked even as of yesterday. Missile being
From
range
Iran, yes.
Jordan itself.
Yeah.
I want to leave the last word to you again, Fred. How would you like to impart our listeners with your last thoughts on the subject, please?
Well, perhaps what I can, most usefully do, Alon, just to close things, is to quote a couple of sentences from the article that you are going to publish, and I'm talking about. I conclude by talking about mitigating and ending
Please,
mutual dehumanization.
please,
And just to quote briefly from it, for the leaders of Hezbollah, the dehumanization of Israeli Jews and targeting of civilian populations comes as naturally as money laundering, drug smuggling, and assassination. And again, what I'm emphasizing here, the leaders of Hezbollah,
right.
not the rank and file, not people who support Hezbollah because Hezbollah delivers social services. I'm talking about the leadership. For Israel, and particularly for a military that possesses a highly refined code of ethics, the challenge is to see maximum protection of civilians in combat operations not as an inconvenience to be avoided when targeting Hezbollah personnel and weaponry in populated areas, but as an opportunity to help the Lebanese state make the argument that Iran and its proxy are the ones placing the country on a pathway to total collapse. Yes, the mission of the IDF is to close with and kill the enemy, but victory in Lebanon will in large measure be defined in terms of what Lebanese Shiites decide: support the state or support Hezbollah. Civilian protection is an essential element of fighting smarter. Dehumanization will take time to unwind. Assigning a higher priority to protecting civilians and their property should begin now. Those are my concluding words there, and perhaps that's how I can conclude now.
Exactly right. Well, thank you so much. Well, exactly on time, right? Again, Fred, thank you. I hope we'll have another opportunity to discuss further as things evolve in the next few weeks, couple of months. Thank you, Fred, again, and all the best. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Alon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Good to see you.
Good to
Bye-bye.
see you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode on the issues. You can find this podcast on my SoundCloud page, and stay tuned to my social media accounts for the latest analysis and announcements.